in this room who's our friend on the other side of the aisle is moving his business to Virginia as we speak. So I just want that to sink in when we look at how big this picture is. And if I just use Pexer for example, Pexer has about $750 million worth of contracts in the 54-15 category. That would be about a $22.5 million hit against their TOA, Total Obligation Authority. That's a tax they're going to have to find a way to pay when the Trump administration is offering up a 7% DOD across the board cut. So if we're bigging on Little Pax, who's the fourth largest employer in the state, we can go to Fort Meade, which is the largest employer in the state, and do that math, which I can't do because I just don't know. But I'm just saying this is a very dangerous bill to put forth. The 54-15 is I use the Star Wars world. This is the Death Star, and I ain't Luke Skywalker, so I can't save it. So I'm just asking you to save the Death Star. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a couple of thoughts. So there's an argument that a consumption tax does not cause outgrowth or outmigration, things of that nature. Well, if that's the case, then why did we strip all the other services from this bill? To me, that's an acknowledgement that a consumption tax will do harm on businesses in the state of Maryland. Secondly, another point was made that companies won't be able to avoid paying this tax, which is another reason for companies to leave. Now, true, not every business can leave or completely leave the state. You know who can? Federal contractors. They can go wherever they want to. Any military base in the country, for example, Huntsville, Alabama, economic development from Huntsville, Alabama is an Aberdeen Proving Ground every couple of weeks, picking off huge companies and relocate them to Huntsville, Alabama. Some of them choose to leave a little office, a little plant a flag saying we're at APG, but they're moving their base of operations to Huntsville, Alabama. Patuxent River, they're being picked off by South Carolina. There's a base down there. They're all moving to South Carolina, and we're getting our clocks cleaned. There's rumors that Patuxent River is in a chopping block in the next round of BRAC. Think about that. What would that do to Southern Maryland? What would that do to Maryland? These federal contractors are not bound by state. There's a few that need to be in Fort Meade because of the SCIF and because of the black box there. But most of these folks can roll, right? They like the proximity, but they have to deal with their shareholders too, right? They're not loyal to Maryland. And we're going to drive them right out, and they can move across state lines, still have their federal contracts and other military installation, and say goodbye to us with no problem. And we've had so many conversations about what's going on in DC and the impact on Maryland and federal workers and the federal workforce. Well, this bill is going to have the same type of effect. If you're upset what's happening in DC with federal layoffs and federal job losses, you should support this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Floor Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I want to go back to what the gentleman from Southern Maryland was raising. He threw out some very large numbers, and I just want to put that into context for the body. When you're talking about a company owing those levels of taxes, it means that they are paying taxes on a very large contract that has very large profits. These aren't small companies if they're going to be paying that level of taxes. Again, this all scales depending on the size of the business. So I don't think that's typical for what we're going to see for most small businesses here in Maryland. The other part that I want to raise is that when we think holistically about how businesses decide where to locate, and this isn't my opinion that I'm about to share, this comes from economists and from study after study that looks at these things, that looks at business locations. What we see are the most important factors. It's not taxes, it's having access to a highly skilled workforce, and it's having good transportation systems. That's exactly the kind of values that we are investing in with this budget, with this BRFA. We are making sure that we have good graduates coming out of our public school districts, and that we have good graduates coming out of our institutions of higher education here in the state, and that we are investing in our transportation systems through the Transportation Trust Fund. That's across the board. Those are the kinds of things that businesses value, that they are looking for as the most basic criteria as to where they're going to locate or where they're going to expand their businesses.
Yes, go ahead.
Madam Speaker, with all due respect to my colleague from Montgomery County, it's interesting when you talk about the large contracts, which I would refer to at PACS as mainframe airplanes. However, I can sit there and tell you that since the Biden administration, the Secretary of the Navy, he insisted that all the service contracts, unless he gave them a waiver coming out of PACS, were going to be small business set-asides, which goes right down the NAICS code. So the Lockheed Martins, the Sikorsky's and things like that, they're not really affected. A couple companies like BAE or somebody, they may be affected, but for the most part, the reason there's such a plethora of small businesses in Southern Maryland now and up in Meade is because of the way the contracts are being structured and the advantage you're trying to push to allow small businesses to be able to succeed under these NAICS codes. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Just to close out, Madam Speaker, and I'll just say this. Look, businesses don't appreciate when you raise their taxes. And respectfully, the government is not investing when it's raising your taxes. So I think we let the tech industry do what they do, which is to innovate, create jobs, create tax revenue on their own without us increasing the tax. And we keep Maryland moving in the right direction, which is to be a more business-friendly state so that we do have revenue and opportunities in our state, which could hopefully fill that hole one day. So for those reasons, Madam Speaker, I move this amendment.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Clerk would take the roll. Call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Clerk will take the call. There being 84 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk. Amendment number 773227-1.
amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So you've already heard, everybody here has heard a good bit of conversation on the tech tax. I won't go too deep into what it exactly does, but as things stand now, this tech tax is going to cover a whole bunch of different tech-related services. And if I'm reading the NAICS codes correctly online, it looks like it's going to cover everything from data processing, web hosting, web search portals, computing infrastructure, computer systems design, and software publishers. So what my amendment does here is that it removes a very specific IT service from being hit with this tax, and that is SaaS, software as a service. For my fellow non-techie friends here in the chamber, SaaS is essentially a software that is hosted by a third-party provider and delivered to customers over the internet as a service. Thank you, Google AI. You might be asking yourself, what are examples of SaaS? So I'll just run off a couple of high-profile different apps and different software programs that probably all of us have used or were at least familiar with. MailChimp, Dropbox, Zoom, Google Drive and Workspace, Netflix, Salesforce, Microsoft Teams, Spotify, Constant Contact, Workday, DocuSign, Zillow Rental Manager, Eventbrite, PayPal, Square, WebEx, SurveyMonkey, and Ring Camera. And so these, like I said, are just some of the more common programs that are used that not only we use, but our constituents use. And yes, obviously, I understand that this is a tax that the vendor or the company, whether they're big or small, is going to have to pay. But if anybody here thinks that these businesses are just going to absorb this tax and not pass it down to the customer, then we're fooling ourselves. There's no scenario where this tax is not going to get passed down to the consumer. So let's remove SaaS, and so with that, we're not hitting Marylanders who are already getting nickel and dimed just about in every single capacity. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I do appreciate my colleague providing his amendment in advance. Respectfully, I'll just say that actually software as a service actually is already taxed under our definition of digital products in the state of Maryland. That's been the case since we adopted that in 2021. That is what's being implemented by the Comptroller's Office, and those taxes already are coming in. So the examples of services you gave already, again, already being taxed, and I figure the next question is going to be, well, are we double taxing them with this? And the answer is no. I would point folks to in the BRFA, in the reprint section, in the Tax General Article 11-104, there's language that particularly addresses that, so that should, just in case something meet the criteria both for this tax and for the digital products tax, it'll only be taxed once. But again, I'd urge the body to reject this amendment because we've already addressed this in law.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I really appreciate the floor leader clarifying that. She read my mind. That was my next question. Somebody over here next to my left or right, I think, passed her my notes. I'm going to have to look into this. But no, I appreciate you clarifying that, because that was something I was wondering if folks were going to get, if some of these companies were going to get double taxed on that. So I'm glad that is separated. I did have another question about the text tax language. One of the parts talks about, it's mentioned twice there, where it refers to other intellectual property. I wasn't sure if you or anyone from the committee would be able to kind of clarify what other intellectual property,
Floor leader.
what that meant.
And I'm going to apologize. We lost our phone connection back to our analyst on the committee who's been with us all day today. We're trying to get back on the phone with them at the moment in regards to that piece. My understanding is that that provision, that language in the BRFA, again, is kind of clarifying in nature. It is building off of what we are already taxing as digital products and those existing definitions of digital products, but we might have a fuller answer here in a moment.
Okay.
Okay, that was the answer.
Okay. Thank you. So, just to clarify, this isn't just going to be affecting large companies. I was just on the phone with somebody on Sunday, somebody in my district who owns a small IT company, and he's worried about what kind of cost this is going to bring to his company. Worried about how he's going to file his taxes this year. This is not something that he's familiar with. It's going to obviously add some complexities there. And so I wholeheartedly believe that this tax, it's going to hurt our businesses, and at the end of the day, it's going to be passed on to regular folks, no matter what part of the state you're from, young or old, rich or poor. And I asked my colleagues in this chamber, please consider supporting this amendment and remove the SAS services out of this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And with that, I push the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose? Clerk will take the call.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Clerk will take the call. There will be 85 votes in the negative. The amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title?
Madam
Hearing
Speaker.
none, the bill is ordered
Madam
for the
Speaker.
third read.
I have an additional amendment at the desk. Thank you,
All right,
Madam Speaker.
Leader, you're standing. Got
Yes.
the
Thank you, Madam
mic.
Speaker. It's 903225/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I figured hour 6, it's time for us to talk about the most interesting thing you're going to hear all day. I look out here into your eyes. I see your excitement. I know you're just here, policy wonks, all of you. Let's talk combined reporting. There we go. Let's get some enthusiasm up here for esoteric elements of the tax code and how it affects economies. Welcome to the Ways and Means Committee. And I know my good friend from Montgomery County, she is more excited than anyone here. No question about this. How often does she get to debate combined reporting? Just today. So what the amendment would do is it would remove the provision of the BRFA that says that Maryland, for the very first time, will go to a corporate tax scheme or corporate tax system known colloquially as combined reporting. Here's what I found interesting. In January, I went along with a lot of other leaders, predominantly leaders of the majority party, but I think myself and the delegate from Caroline County and a few others were at this little breakfast briefing that the governor held. And he talked about his budget, and he talked about his tax plan, and he talked about all the things he was going to do. And he said, I'm really, really happy to say that we're going to lower the corporate income tax under my watch, meaning Governor Moore's watch. We're going to lower the corporate income tax for the first time in forever in Maryland. We're going to do this. What he didn't say was the trade-off was we were going to institute combined reporting, and it wasn't going to happen for 3 years roughly down the road. What this chamber has made a decision to do today is we're actually not going to promise to lower the corporate income tax 3 years down the road, but we are going to do the combined reporting. Now, we're going to do the combined reporting because folks think that it's going to generate more money. The Maryland Chamber of Commerce in opposition. The Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce in strong opposition. The Howard County Chamber of Commerce in strong opposition. The Maryland Bankers, the Global Business Alliance, pretty much any other business group that you can put a stick to doesn't think this is a very good idea. Who else didn't think it was a very good idea? Well, in 2010, Maryland had what was called a Maryland Business Tax Reform Commission. They recommended against implementing combined reporting because it would lead to increased volatility in the corporate income tax. One of the reasons why we have perpetual budget deficits is because we ask the DLS people to do something that is impossible. We ask them within a few $1 million to take our policies and turn them into hard dollars and say, well, gee, if you do this, you're going to get $250 million next year. And guess what? If we only get $150 million, then we have a $100 million budget deficit going into the year. And everybody's like, I guess we got to raise another tax. It didn't work out. That's not DLS's fault. They do the best that they can do, but no one can predict a complex, dynamic economy and the impacts of all of these tax policies to the degree of specificity that we seem to require. We see these fiscal notes and we think like it's the word from on high. It's not. In 2016, the Maryland Economic Development and Business Climate Commission, many of us were here during this, they called it the Augustine Commission, similarly recommended not to enact combined reporting, highlighting not only revenue volatility, but that it picks winners and losers. What does that mean? There are some companies who are going to pay less in Maryland's corporate income tax because you're going to impose combined reporting. There are some that are going to pay more, and it really doesn't have anything to do with how successful they are as a company. It has to do with how they report their income and whether or not they exist across multi-jurisdictional lines. Some industries are like, this is going to cause us to not want to do business in Maryland because you're going to throw into all of our income that we have from other places, and our Maryland operations just aren't that damn big. I'd rather not. Some industries, on the other hand, are going to say, hey, I got a tax cut. I got a tax cut by this. What else? Did the Augustine Commission say, please don't do this? The potential for litigation and additional administrative costs for both taxpayers and the state, and the uncertainty and negative message sent to the business community. It's so difficult to implement, in fact, that we can't do it for 3 more years. So when you pass this, this is not getting a single dollar into the budget that you're passing. It's not getting a single dollar into next year's budget. I don't think it's getting a single dollar into the budget 2+ years from now. It's not paying for the blueprint short term. It's not paying for Medicaid. It's not paying for that 1% COLA because the comptroller's office can't even administer it in real time because it's so damn complicated and complex. That's why we have to phase it out for 3 years. Most importantly to me is this. We are not the United States of Maryland. There are many states that have combined reporting. My friend from Montgomery County will point that out to you. Some of them are quote-unquote red states. Some of them are blue states. But the state that worries me the most, my friend from Dorchester County talked about North Carolina. That's a little far away from me. I'm very familiar with the state of Virginia. I went to college there. I practiced law there. I have a lot of family there. In 2021, Virginia looked at combined reporting by also requiring the actual filing of pro forma tax returns and came to a similar conclusion. The Virginia Combined Reporting Work Group cited, quote, the potential damage to Virginia's business climate with such a policy. Ultimately, neighboring Virginia has not pursued a combined reporting tax policy. Virginia is giving their citizens a tax break. Their General Assembly session is concluded. They're giving their citizens a tax break because they have a multi-billion-dollar surplus. And I got news for you, Virginia's schools are rated about the same, potentially better than what ours are. People still get Medicaid in Virginia. There are still roads in Virginia. WMATA still exists in Fairfax County and Arlington and all throughout. I know my friend from Montgomery County, he likes to take a ride, get over into the Commonwealth. all the things that we think we have to keep raising our taxes to do here in Maryland, the Commonwealth of Virginia, mere miles from many of you, they seem to be able to do them without all of this. Without combined reporting, without tax raises, they seem to be able to do it. And I got news for you, they are not any smarter than us. I lived in Richmond, Virginia for 4 years. It's not a place full of magical, smart people that are just geniuses that figured this out. It's a place, though, that has a balanced legislature and has a balanced policy approach to things and does not always reject economic growth and economic development in favor of interest groups and others who want money and who want policies that are not probably good overall for the economy. Combined reporting will not solve the problems that you're looking to solve. It will cause more problems. It does not affect this year's budget. It does not put us out of balance to reject it. And if you're worried about why does Virginia have all of these advantages, why are they growing and we're not? Why is their economy better? Why is their budget better? I don't know. Let's listen to the experts. I'm not one. I just like to listen to them. Let's listen to the experts and let's reject and send a clear signal that we're not going to do this. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And my colleague and friend from the Ways and Means Committee is not wrong. I'm always ready and happy to talk about combined reporting. So we heard a lot of particular concerns from the minority leader, and I will get to those, but I just want to take a step back to begin with about why are we talking about combined reporting? What is the purpose of this? Well, if we look for decades and decades here in Maryland and in other separate reporting states, we have seen that the share of state revenues that come in from our corporate income taxes have been declining. That's noted by the National Conference on State Legislatures. We're at a point here in Maryland where just 3%, only 3% of our total state's revenues come from corporate income taxes. Moreover, if you look at the largest businesses, largest 150 businesses that operate in the state of Maryland, 1/3 of those businesses paid nothing, $0 in state income taxes in the most recent year that we have data from the Comptroller's office. And even more so, we see nationally that Maryland ranks dead last in the nation for the share of our state and local taxes that are paid by businesses. Dead last by a lot. We are really an outlier at this point. Meanwhile, corporate profits are at an all-time high. And I'll say these two things are not accidents, because we have seen for years that especially very large multi-state, multinational corporations have been engaging in legal forms of profit shifting. They are able to exploit our status as a separate reporting state to shift profits to both domestic and foreign tax havens, states like South Dakota and Wyoming. And they can do this by creating subsidiaries or shell companies in these low tax or no tax jurisdictions and then artificially shifting profits to those jurisdictions. And because we're a separate reporting state, we look at each of those business entities separately, even though they're not separate entities. Those subsidiaries don't operate as separate businesses, many cases. You have to look at the unified whole to have an actual viable business. And that's exactly what combined reporting does. It directly solves this problem, addresses this problem by looking holistically at the revenues and the activities of businesses that are inherently interrelated. Now, as was mentioned, there are many other states that do combined reporting, and if folks remember the debate from last year, I'm going to be absolutely clear. The type of combined reporting we're talking about this year is the exact same type of combined reporting that 28 other states plus DC already require. They require it of all of the companies that are doing business in their state. Includes many red states: Alaska, Arizona, Idaho, Kansas, Kentucky, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, Texas, Utah, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. A majority of the states who've been doing combined reporting have been doing it for a long time. A majority of them adopted it 40 years ago. About 20 years ago, there was another spate of states coming online. A few have trickled in since then. But in most states, this has been on the books for decades. The very first state started doing this in the 1930s, even before there were modern computers or modern calculators. And what I think is most notable about this trend on combined reporting is that we only see states adopting it. There literally has never been a state that adopted combined reporting and then decide to repeal it. It is good policy. We see that from these other states. These red states that have chosen to adopt combined reporting and to keep it. They see it as good for their small businesses. Because how are small businesses who are paying their taxes on all of their profits, on all of their income, so as to compete when these mega corporations, the big boys, basically are creating their own rules. They're playing by a completely different set of rules. Combined reporting levels the playing field for our small businesses. And we also see from the experience of other states that combined reporting is good for residents. Residents, not just in Maryland, but across the country, are paying their taxes on their hard-earned wages and salaries. And I'll note that income is the one form of taxes that we give no preferential treatment to. None. So residents are paying their fair share, small businesses are paying their fair share. This is about making sure that the biggest companies, the biggest corporations pay their fair share as well. Now, I want to get into some of the specific points that the minority leader raised. He raised about competitiveness with other states. Well, it's worth noting that the right-leaning tax foundation, when they do an annual assessment of state tax competitiveness of their supposed 10 best states, half of those are combined reporting states. If you want to look at a more objective data source, the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis looks at economic growth in each state for each quarter, and I looked at the most recent data from 2024, and if you look at the 10 fastest growing state economies, 7 of those states are combined reporting states. We also can look to a study from the National Conference on State Legislatures that found that there is, quote, no evidence that combined reporting has any impact on a state's economic activity. Second point, around volatility, or somehow this might be less money for the state of Maryland. I'll say on face value, respectfully, that one doesn't pass the smell test. Why would 28 states plus DC use combined reporting, keep it on their books for decades if it was inherently less stable or brought in less money? But you don't have to take my word for that. Again, let's look at the evidence. A nationwide study conducted by the National Conference of State Legislatures found that for an average state, adopting combined reporting would mean an extra $96 million a year in income. And we actually have real data as well from here in Maryland. This body required that companies file basically like dummy combined reporting reports along with their taxes for tax years 2006 to 2010. So we have real data from real companies that were doing business here in the state of Maryland. Now, notably, that time period, as we all remember, included the Great Recession. But if we look at the first 2 years, 2006, 2007 tax years, those first 2 years, if we had had combined reporting in place, it would have meant 20 to 25% more revenues on corporate income taxes for the state of Maryland. To the point on volatility, even during the Great Recession, which was an unprecedented recession in modern history, that under combined reporting, it was actually less volatile year to year than our separate reporting currently is. And I'll say all of that is consistent with what our Department of Legislative Services is saying, that combined reporting, adopting, requiring combined reporting is going to raise $173 million a year once it's fully implemented. And on that point, the good gentleman raised an issue about a 3-year delay. That really has to do with giving time for our comptroller's office, who has been in the midst of a multi-year upgrade to their technology systems, the opportunity to finish that, to finish deploying the technology upgrades that they are working on before needing to take on a new task in terms of implementing combined reporting. Moving on. Allegation about this being particularly burdensome to companies. Well, again, we can look at the real world data. Most big companies that are operate in multiple states are already doing combined reporting. Study done here in Maryland of the 120 largest multi-state companies found that 108 of those 120 were already filing combined reports in other states because they do business in other states. 61% of our nation's economy is based in states that do combined reporting. At this point, companies really would have to work actively very hard to avoid combined reporting states. Now, for the rest of businesses, they're not going to see any difference in what they need to do with filing their taxes. For small businesses, I would say even for corporations that have not engaged in these games of profit shifting, nothing's going to change for them. They're going to keep filing their taxes just as they are. It is no additional burden on them. This really is about making sure that the bad actors who've gone out of their way through very complex, sophisticated accounting and legal maneuvers to set up these subsidiaries in tax havens are paying what they truly owe. And if they could have the wherewithal to set up those very complicated schemes, they can certainly pay their taxes just like they are in other states. And on the very last point that I'll make here about the Augustine Commission report back in 2016, it is true that that was a recommendation to not adopt combined reporting. But I think there's a key fact that's missing from our consideration at this point, almost 10 years later, on that recommendation, which is back at the time, Maryland was not, how should I put this? Basically, we considered how we did our taxes differently. We considered whether or not a company had a physical nexus or a physical presence in the state. So back then, if theoretically a company didn't like some policy or some proposal here in Maryland and they moved out of state, it actually would have decreased taxes in Maryland. That is no longer the case, because we took another one of the recommendations of the Augustine Commission just a couple of years later to adopt single sales factor apportionment. And under single sales factor apportionment, if a company threatens that they're going to go, that's not going to decrease their taxes. Their taxes are based on the percentage of their national sales that happen here in the state. So it's for all of these reasons that I would urge the body to reject this amendment.
Briefly, Madam Speaker.
Briefly.
Thank you. I heard a lot of wonky words. I'm not going to bother with throwback rule. I think I got PTSD about single factor sales tax, blah, blah, blah. I will tell you this. You know why Maryland only has such a small percentage of our revenues are derived from the corporate income tax? Because we don't have big companies here. Amazon ain't coming. Didn't want to come. They wanted to go to where? Virginia. Where are all the big companies coming to Maryland? I don't know. Where are they coming? I sit in Ways and Means. The good gentlemen, the economic development folks from Montgomery County come, and we compare statistics. Guess who's eating the lunch of the M part of the DMV when it comes to business growth? The V part, Virginia. And guess who's not doing combined reporting? Because their businesses tell them it's a bad idea and it's going to cause all these types of issues, including potentially higher taxes. Higher taxes in and of themselves are not the role. Virginia. If you're worried about why we keep falling behind, stop tying your shoelaces together. Start running the race with our number one competitor, Virginia. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move the amendment.
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would highly recommend that we not take what we've heard from the floor leader on this, on the tech tax, on the floor leader that talked about how the business wasn't created, or whatever the quote was that was, frankly, as a small business person, very frustrating for me to hear. Would not recommend you hand that to the governor and the Department of Commerce and create a perspective to invite businesses to come into our state of Maryland. What I'm hearing is not music to my ears as a business person. And if we're going to talk about the Augustine Commission, and I'm going to be short because when I get done quoting this one quote, I'm going to sit down. But I want you to think about what I'm getting ready to say and then compare and contrast that with what you've heard from the floor leader for the past 15 minutes. The strongest message conveyed by witnesses appearing before this commission, whether representing small or large businesses, was dissatisfaction with the attitude towards business from state and local governments. What I hear is a small businessman with a family of 26 employees is a general disregard for businesses. It's the only way that you can listen to what I just heard for 15 minutes and walk away with a takeaway. What's the takeaway? Forget about combined reporting for a minute. What's the message you're sending? What's the message that's being sent? Do we want businesses in our state? Because it doesn't sound like it. I'm going to be voting for the amendment. I think the floor leader's got not the floor leader, the minority leader's got the position right on this. We've had it right in the years past. I hope the Senate does some good work on this bill.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be very brief, 30 seconds. I'm voting for this amendment because it seems like our tax policy when it comes to major corporations is we want to pick winners and losers. Back in 2016, we gave Marriott $70 million. In 2016, we gave Northrop Grumman $37.5 million to locate here. 2012, we gave Lockheed Martin, I don't even know how much that was, but we gave them big property tax incentive to come here. So we're okay with specifically identifying certain businesses to come here, but we don't want to give broad-based tax cuts or broad-based incentives for other companies to come here too. So that's the reason why I'm voting against this. I think every corporation should be treated exactly the same, and we want to eliminate as many roadblocks as we possibly can for these big corporations to come to Maryland. Thank you.
Question for the
Madam
House? Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The good delegate brought up the Tax Foundation, so I just wanted to highlight, I looked it up. They put a blog out today about the complexity of this combined reporting. There are often disagreements about which affiliated entities are properly considered part of the unitary group for tax purposes. We brought this up a few different times. I just want to direct the body if they want to research this, but Tax Foundation blogged this today about Maryland. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just very briefly on that last point, I'll say that there is confusion now when under separate reporting. I'll point to kind of an infamous case here in Maryland involving Staples and some of its in-state subsidiaries that took almost 20 years for the courts to resolve, ultimately in the state's favor, because there was disagreement about which of the in-state subsidiaries should have to pay along with each other. And that's under separate reporting right now. So, I think we should be eyes wide open about what the current system is, and it is also not perfect.
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Like my good friend from Eastern Shore, I will be brief.
Yeah, right.
So I just wanted to say, I also listened to the young lady from Montgomery County speak about taxes at great length, and certainly very knowledgeable. There's no doubt about that. But if I were Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia, I would clip that speech and say, this speech is brought to you by the Chamber of Commerce in the state of Virginia. And I would just play that again and again and again, and it would wreck this state's business community. So it's just remarkable. I mean, it's to sit here and to listen to this almost sounds like I'm, reading some sort of book from, Marxism or Leninism or this kind of philosophy where people get up and they just talk again and again and again about how excited they are about taxing people. So just a remarkable thing. It's probably one of the most remarkable days I've ever had since I've been here. Thank you.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose? Clerk will take the call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? So the clerk will take the call. There being 92 votes in the negative, the amendment fails.
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk. Amendment number 403321-1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to switch gears here a little bit. This amendment actually goes back to what the gentlelady from Anne Arundel County had alluded to earlier with cost shifting. What I'll say about this budget and this year's spending is that these budget decisions, these cost overruns, these expenditures that we can't cover, these deficits, well, they roll downhill. And the place that they roll downhill to is our counties. And instead of, kind of taking it on the chin and saying, hey, this is our mess up, we've exceeded our budget, and we're going to make it right, we're shifting a lot of these costs down to the counties that, frankly, we've never asked them to incur. We're doing so with short notice, and these are sizable dollar amounts. This specific amendment deals specifically with the SDAT administrative cost. And I've actually reached out to DLS, because we heard this in our committee, about what are these numbers? What kind of numbers are we looking at when we shift these costs for basically all of what goes into doing property assessments? I've singled out here the big 3 counties. So if you vote against this amendment, you'll be shifting in Montgomery County $3,120,000 and some change. to your local county government. If you are in Prince George's County, you'll be shifting $2,750,000 down to your county. And if you are in Baltimore County, you'll be shifting $2,711,000 down to your counties. Now, that's a lot. Let's look at the three smallest counties' administrative cost. If we look at Somerset, you'll be voting to shift $158,176 down to your county. If you're in Caroline, it's $139,000. And if you're Kent County, you're shifting $112,000 in cost by moving from a 50% split, which is the case now, to a 90% split, whereas the state is only paying 10%. Now it gets better. You might say, well, hey, they're the ones benefiting from this. They should incur more of the cost. Well, we're not done yet. And I actually reached out to DLS, and they really can't give me a straight answer other than they don't think so. But we also have HB 6, which cleared out of the House and is now over in the Senate awaiting a hearing. And that's going to move an additional $1 million aggregate dollars down to the counties to pay for the aerial oblique studies. So not only are we telling the counties, you've now got to pick up a 40% increase in your administrative cost, we're also going to tell you how to do it, and we're going to prescribe a vendor to do it. So all in all, we're telling the counties, this is an additional cost. It's going to hit you right away. We're telling them what vendor they have to use. We're saying that they have to pay for the vendor that we chose. And this is a massive, when you combine this with the teacher pension, and I'll point out my county, $438,000 just for this, another $10,000 to $20,000 for the study, lob on the teacher pensions, another $3 million. We're talking millions and millions of dollars being pushed down onto our county governments. It's disturbing. And what does that mean for the folks even farther down the governmental spectrum, our towns? I've met with 3 of my towns during this session to kind of give them updates on what's happening. And you know what they're telling me? They're saying, Kevin, we don't know what to do. All of those partnerships that we had with the county, all those goodwill and shared and deferred cost that the county was helping us out on, because they're magnanimous. They can, they should. They're not going to be able to do that anymore. They can't help offset our sewer cost on the shared system. They can't offset that water that we're all incurring together. This is disproportionately impacting our smallest communities. We are not letting these costs fall through the cracks. We are pushing them through the cracks. And it is ending up at the doorstep of the taxpayer that lives in the community. I'm asking for a green vote on this amendment to assuage some of these exorbitant costs that we're pushing down. And I'd ask for your support on this one amendment. Let's give a little relief to our counties and towns. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be brief because I think the Chair of Pension Subcommittee did a great job on this issue earlier. Look, we're making tough decisions. We're asking our counties to be partners in that. I think that's fair. I also think, by and large, they can afford to be partners with us in this and make hard decisions like we're making. If you look at the property tax revenue, a chart in front of me, for the past 2 years, fiscal 25, the counties on average, 5% increase. Fiscal 24, counties on average, 20% increase. You mentioned Prince George's County, that's almost a $100 million increase in property tax revenue that they have realized just in the past 2 years. I would suggest we're probably on track for similar numbers in fiscal 26. And if we're going to ask them to share in some of the responsibility, I think this one makes sense because they are, as you mentioned, the major beneficiaries of what SSTAT does, which is assessing these properties. And I think in asking them to do that, there probably are some gains in collaboration and efficiencies and more attention that they'll pay in the process as we do it. So for all those reasons, and you should know, finally, Department of Legislative Services actually recommended hundreds of millions of dollars of additional transfers to the counties that were rejected by the Appropriations Committee. The teacher, when we talked about earlier, they recommended that that be transferred 100% to the counties because they are county employees. We did reject that, so I do think we're striking the right balance between partnership with the counties in these tough times.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, thank you. I've been sitting here listening to this debate. I did some research during the summer about loan modifications. Loan modifications are when you get behind on your mortgage and you can't make your payments, what do? They modify them. Loan modifications are up, I believe, 60%. So now we're going to pass down all these new costs with property taxes. People are at their wits' end. I'm just telling you from my experience, we are heading the wrong direction. We're standing on a physical cliff that I believe once we step off, I don't know how we're going to get back. I'm being honest with you. In Baltimore County, there's a lot of people right there on the edge. So I would urge a green vote on this. Again, thank you.
Madam Speaker, in closing.
Yes.
Thank you. And I want to kind of back up my colleague from Baltimore County. There are significant costs getting pushed down onto the counties in the form of blueprint mandates. I think it's a little over 1.4 billion aggregate across the state. Yes, is there some level of synergy between governments on this? Yes, the state is saying, hey, you can raise your income tax cap. We're going to get more in assessment dollars for you. But guess who's paying all of that? Our citizens. They are forking over a great deal more money, exponentially more than they have asked in the past. Yep, we have so many folks that are on fixed incomes that can't take this jolt, this one-time significant increase, because then they have to start making decisions between being able to continue to live here, how many meals they eat, their ability to have discretionary income. These are very large increases over very short periods of time. And yes, will all the governmental bodies survive this shock? Yes, they will. They'll find a way. But our citizens won't. That's why I'm asking for a green vote on this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Clerk will take the call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anybody else back there? Clerk will take the call. There being 87 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title?
Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk 833525/1.
Amendment number 1.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is just a run-of-the-mill $32 million tax raise. You know, we vote them all the time. This is a $32 million tax raise. We're raising the tax rate for sports betting. Why should we care? Who cares? Sports betting. Let's get that extra $32 million. We're rifling those couch cushions everywhere we can. Maryland's current tax rate of 15% already places it above the nationwide median tax rate for sports betting of 13%. It's done in most of the 50 states now. 5 years ago, that seemed impossible, but it is. And once again, Maryland always tries to be one of the highest. We're well above the median. We brought in $81 million over the last 12 months. That's our cut of the sports betting money. That's not enough. We've got to raise the percentages again to get an extra rated $32 million. The companies who have come in and invested in the state of Maryland with our in-state casinos, 5 of the 6 of them have partners. Mine, the casino in my county, does not, which is a source of constant frustration for me because I would like to go and, bet the March Madness game, sit there, watch the game. Can't do it in Allegheny County. But these companies have made massive investments into our existing casinos. Our casinos are not the enemy. They are not the villains. They are our partners. If we did not have casino gambling and sports gambling in Maryland today, could you imagine what our education trust fund and our blueprint aspirations would look like? They would be shot to you-know-where. They are our partners, and they are here telling you that this is going to cause problems for them because their margins are extremely small because unlike slot machines and table games, people win a lot sometimes in sports betting. It's easier to win in sports betting than it is in pure games of chance where the deck is always stacked against you. And the only way that they maintain any sort of leverage is by setting the point spreads or the margins for different types of bets. And they're able to do that to induce people to bet here. You go on your phone and you look at the different spreads and you say, well, gee, Maryland's favored by 3 points over Florida on this one, and it's favored by 2 points on this other one. I'll bet the one, depending on who you're betting. I bet you we're all betting on Maryland. I'll bet the one that gives me the best odds. Turns out a lot of those places are unregulated, illegal sports gambling operations in Maryland. They're advertising into our consumers. Why can they afford to offer the better odds to induce that sports gambler? Hey man, just sign up with them. They're giving you a great deal. You got a better chance of winning because they're not taxed. They're not taxed. The people who we want to be here are taxed. They are our partners. They help us pay for all the things that we want to pay for, and we're going to raise their taxes if you don't approve this amendment. And their perspective is very simple. It just makes it tougher and tougher for us to offer products in the state of Maryland. It decreases the limited profit margins we have, but it gets you $32 million more in the couch cushions. I encourage you to take a real hard look at who you're kicking and why, and realize it's not necessary, and adopt the amendment to keep the sports betting tax percentage at 15%. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just briefly, we're asking just a modest increase from 15 to 20%, and that's only on mobile sports betting. Colleagues, Pennsylvania is at 36%, Delaware is at 50%, New York at 51%, Rhode Island at 51%, and Illinois, New Hampshire, Vermont, and DC are at 20% or higher. So this is just a modest increase, which only applies to mobile sports betting. Still, 15% is the tax rate if you are at a casino and engaging in sports betting. So I would ask you to reject this amendment.
All right. Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose? Clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Clerk will take the call. There being 96 votes in the negative, the amendment fails.
Madam Speaker,
Yes.
have an amendment at the desk.
Go ahead.
Amendment number 433429.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Colleagues, this amendment seeks to halt the acceleration of various motor vehicle registration fees increases and return those fee increases to their previously enacted schedules. So what fees do these involve? Class A passenger vehicles exceeding 3,700 pounds, certain Class E trucks, and Class M multi-purpose vehicles also exceeding 3,700 pounds. These fees were scheduled to be concluded by and be fully implemented by July 1st of 2026. However, in this year's budget, they have accelerated to be completed by July 1st of this year. As accelerated, the increases range from 24 to 66% depending on the type of class or vehicle registered. I asked the body, who here has had a constituent or constituents in this past year contact you or your office regarding the motor vehicle registration fee increases enacted last year, or has renewed his or her own vehicle registration, myself included? This amendment simply returns the implementation schedule to the previously enacted schedule, and I believe the acceleration of these fees are regressive and will have the most negative impact on those individuals in our districts who can afford them the least. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The registration fees, which the good delegate is referring to, the increase was passed last year, and implemented for most of the vehicles in the state already. What the delegate is referring to affects about between 30 and 38% of the vehicles in the state, the heavier vehicles. And we are moving that increased fee up and implementing it this year because it brings $52 million to the Transportation Trust Fund to pay for things like Highway 81 in Western Maryland and other transportation projects that we've already talked about ad nauseum today. So because we need this extra $52 million, because it was a fee already passed, we're not negating the delegate's concern, but we are saying that we need to do this for the Transportation Trust Fund. So I urge you to reject this amendment.
Maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank the floor leader for that explanation. I know we've discussed several things today, from tax increases to energy costs to fee increases. And I simply offer this amendment to just provide relief, albeit very small and temporary, to many of our constituents, especially those that need it the most. And with that, I press the amendment, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose? Clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? So the clerk will take the call. There being 88 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments?
Madam Speaker,
You have
I'm
an-
betting cleanup.
You have an amendment?
I do, ma'am. I do at the desk, and it's Amendment 633327.
Amendment number 1.
How many of you guys fish? I like to see those hands. So when you go fishing, you get nothing all day. What do you get? You get skunked. So now, I have a bill at the desk, and I have the opportunity to talk to either my chair or his wingman, the professor, who will make sure I stay skunked and we stay skunked all day. So the bill basically is a repeat of what you've heard before. But it comes from the brother of the other mother over here who has it every year. So we thought they would switch it up a little bit, give it to me. So it's very simple. No, I'm not talking about you, Fisher, don't worry. We want to, this year, again ask to please not add the CPI gas tax to us. We're talking pennies compared to the amount of money we've spent so far today talking and arguing these things. Right now, it's about 115,000 EVs, 3.5 million gas vehicles out there, 46 cents a gallon on the tax. We just can't keep taxing, so I'm not going to keep this going any further. That's my amendment. That's my request. So either the chairman or the wingman will take me out. So thank you.
Committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now I feel really bad doing this, so I hope you're happy. I would ask the body to resist the amendment. The inflation adjustment from the current fiscal year to the next fiscal year is estimated to bring in about $25 million for all of the many projects and transportation programs we've previously talked about. Also, since this comes up every year, I just want to point out that 24 states and the District of Columbia have variable motor fuel tax rates, either using CPI or the cost of construction or the average cost of a price of gasoline. So we are in very good company in having this kind of approach. And in fact, you mentioned the gas tax is a little over 46 cents. It's interesting. Last year it was actually 47 cents. It's gone down. The gas tax went down. I think that's good for people's pocketbooks. I think, unfortunately, to make the investments we want to make, we should not be arbitrarily pushing it down forward by removing this increase, which, if we remove this year, compounds into the future, right? If we don't do the upward adjustment on it this year, the problem gets worse for the long-term funding of all our transportation infrastructure, including in Southern Maryland. And so for that reason, I would ask the body to resist the amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay. Question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose? Clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Clerk will take the call. There being 87 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Yes.
Madam Speaker, I would just like to be recorded green on the previous amendment, if that's possible.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
My button didn't work on the previous amendment, 833525.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
I can't read.
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Yeah, I get that a lot. I have a vote change on Amendment 2 and Amendment number 34 of HB 352. From yea to nay, please.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a vote change on 390-913-829/122 yay.
Are there any further amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none. The bill has been, what is he doing? It's ordered, printed for third reading. That ends the work at the desk. Thank you for your hard work and focus today. It's been about 7 hours, but you held up. It's been a long debate. Some of us may not always agree, but I respect and value all of the hard work that you put in on behalf of your constituents. So thank you again.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if I can, before I get to my committee announcements,
Sure.
I want to thank you for being here, leading this debate. We've all been able to be out here.
Oh, yes. Standing here 6 hours in heels.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. You know, I'm over here sitting on my butt and I'm exhausted, and you're up there, you know. So thank you and amazing.
You're quite welcome.
As to my committee announcements, we will have bill hearings immediately following session.
Okay. All righty. Yes, Chairman.
No such luck. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House Judiciary Committee will begin bill hearings at 5:15.
Okay. Environment and Transportation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House Environment and Transportation Committee will also have bill hearings starting at 5:15.
Ways and Means.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Ways and Means Committee's bill hearings have been postponed to tomorrow. Enjoy your time.
Economic Matters.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Economic Matters will have bill hearings immediately following floor.
Health and Government Operations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Health and Government Operations Committee will have bill hearings at 5:15, please. Thank you.
Any subcommittee announcements? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Natural Resources Subcommittee will meet 10 minutes after hearings today. We have one bill to discuss. Thank you.
Yes.
Local government will have a subcommittee meeting immediately following the Natural Resources Subcommittee meeting.
Any other subcommittee? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Quick adjustment. Land Use and Ethics will meet immediately after local government.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Anne Arundel County Alcohol Subcommittee will meet tomorrow immediately after floor. Thank you.
Any other subcommittee? Yes. Yes.
I have been corrected. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
The Health and Government Operations Committee, I'm so sorry. We have to go immediately after floor to the committee hearing, okay? Sorry, immediately after floor. Thank you.
Okay. Any others? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to make sure I was put in the red for the committee amendment HB 350, and that is number 143. Thank you.
Okay. Any delegation announcements? Okay. Any caucus announcements? Okay, and personal or guest announcement? Any caucus announcement? Who's the?
Hi, Madam
Legislative Black
Speaker.
Caucus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Legislative Black Caucus of Maryland members, we will have photo day tomorrow morning at 9:40 a.m. Weather permitting, we'll meet you outside on the steps. Thank you, 9:40 a.m. tomorrow.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. For the Latino Caucus, our final Cafe Con Amigo is tomorrow at 3:40. It is virtual. We will be joined by the Senate President. Thank you.
And the other caucus, yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Veterans Caucus will have our final meeting tomorrow at 8 a.m. in the Baltimore City Delegation Room.
Any other caucus announcements? Okay. Any personal or guest announcement?
Madam Speaker?
Yes.
I'd just like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the woman that we lost yesterday, a former woman elected to Congress, Mia Love, first Black Republican woman elected to Congress, died on Sunday at the age of 49. Mia Love, she not only served in Congress, but she also served as a city council in Saratoga and also their mayor. So I just ask the body to just take a brief moment of silence in honor of her legacy. Thank you, body, and thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're quite welcome. Any other personal or guest announcements? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I did have a constituent that was in the gallery today, and I did tell her that I would still announce her even though it's 4:30.
4:34.
Yes, ma'am. Her name is Katiesa Vergara. She is a sophomore at the University of Maryland studying criminology and criminal justice. She's also an immigrant to the 45th District. We're really proud of the work that she's doing. She's working over at the Apartments and Office Building Association, contributing and learning about the legislative process. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're quite welcome. Any other personal or guest announcements? Okay. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their presence? So the clerk will take the call. There being 132 members present, the House is still in session, recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stands adjourned until Wednesday, March 26th at 10 a.m., legislative date March 11th.